She was supposed to teach me literature, but instead, she taught me something no book ever could. Her lessons weren't written on paper, they were written in every glance, every silence, and every moment that changed the way I felt about her. I still remember the way the sunlight spilled through the classroom windows that afternoon, soft, golden, unhurried. Dust floated lazily in the air, catching the light like tiny secrets waiting to be noticed. She stood near the blackboard, her voice low and deliberate, explaining a passage from a novel I can't even recall now. What I do remember is her, the calm authority in her tone, the way her presence filled the room without ever demanding it. She wasn't young, not in the way most of my classmates admired. But there was something deeper about her, a quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was. Her eyes, sharp yet kind, carried a patience that made you want to listen, to deserve her attention. And somehow, when she looked my way, the world slowed down just a little. After class, when the room had emptied and only the faint scent of chalk lingered, she called my name. "Stay for a minute," she said. My heartbeat quickened, though I didn't know why. She sat on the edge of her desk, flipping through my essay. The sound of each page turning felt strangely intimate. She didn't speak right away, just read, lips pressed lightly together, brow furrowed in thought. When she finally looked up, her expression softened. "You write with honesty," she said quietly. "It's rare for someone your age to sound sincere." Her words caught me off guard. Compliments weren't new, but hers felt different. It wasn't about talent, it was about something she saw in me. She asked about the story I'd written, a small piece about feeling lost between childhood and adulthood. I tried to explain, fumbling for words, and she listened as if every one mattered. The room felt smaller, closer, as though the walls themselves leaned in to listen. When she handed the paper back, her fingers brushed mine. Just a fleeting touch, but enough to send a quiet shiver through me, not of attraction, but of recognition. "Keep that honesty," she said softly. "It'll make you a better writer, and maybe a better man." Her voice lingered in my head the rest of the day. I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I wanted to. As I walked out of the classroom, the afternoon sun hit me again, brighter than before. That day, I realized some lessons aren't written in textbooks. They live in moments, in the warmth of a voice, the weight of a gaze, and the way one person can make you feel seen for the very first time. It started as something small, a habit born out of coincidence. She stayed after class to grade papers, I stayed because I always had questions about the readings. But after a few days, it stopped feeling like coincidence at all. The school would grow quiet once the last bell rang. The distant hum of the city faded behind the heavy wooden doors, and the world outside seemed to pause. Inside, the classroom was bathed in the soft glow of a desk lamp she always kept on, its light warm against the fading gray of evening. That lamp became our little world. She'd sit behind her desk, glasses slipping slightly down her nose, hair tied loosely as she marked papers. I'd sit across from her, pretending to revise my essay, though mostly I was just watching the way she moved, precise yet unhurried, like she had all the time in the world. One evening, the sky broke open with rain. It fell hard against the windows, drumming softly like a rhythm meant only for the two of us. She looked up and smiled. "Seems we're trapped," she said. There was something comforting in her voice, a mix of humor and calm that made me forget how long I'd been staring. She invited me to pull my chair closer so we could go through my essay together. The rain softened everything, her voice, her laughter, even the silence between us. At one point, as she leaned over to underline a sentence, her sleeve brushed against my hand. The touch was accidental, light, but it lingered, not in my skin, but somewhere deeper. Neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence between our breaths. After a moment, she spoke again, softly. "You write about loneliness like you've met it before." I nodded. "Maybe I have." She smiled faintly. "Then you'll understand what I mean when I say, sometimes we find company in the most unexpected places." For a second, she looked out the window, lost in a thought she didn't share. The reflection of the lamplight danced across her face, softening the lines of age into something timeless. We kept working until the storm quieted, our words slower now, our glances longer. When I finally stood to leave, she handed me my paper and said, "You've improved. But remember, writing isn't about getting better. It's about getting braver." Outside, the rain had stopped, but I could still hear its echo in my chest. That night, as I walked home under the wet streetlights, I realized something had shifted, not just in the way I saw her, but in the way I saw myself. It was a Saturday afternoon when she asked if I could help prepare for the school's upcoming literature fair. I said yes before she even finished the sentence. Maybe I just wanted to see her outside the usual rhythm of class, without the distance that came with being teacher and student. The art room smelled faintly of paint and old wood. Sunlight streamed through high windows, falling across scattered brushes, half-finished posters, and stacks of books. She wore something simple, a loose white blouse and jeans, her hair tied up carelessly. For the first time, she didn't look like my teacher. She looked real. We worked side by side in the quiet hum of the room. She was focused, precise, humming softly under her breath as she arranged the display boards. Every now and then, she'd stop to offer gentle instructions, her tone always patient. I tried to keep up, but truthfully, I was more distracted by her presence than the task itself. At one point, she came to check a banner I was painting. "Careful," she murmured, leaning over my shoulder. "You're pressing too hard on the brush, see?" Her hand slid over mine, steadying it. Her fingers were warm, sure. The smell of her perfume, soft and floral, filled the air between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The brush trembled slightly beneath our joined hands. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, "Teaching isn't just explaining. It's sharing." Her voice was low, thoughtful. She let go, slowly, her fingertips brushing against my wrist as she pulled away. I swallowed, my heart beat louder than it should have been. "You make it sound easy," I said, forcing a small smile. She smiled back, faintly amused. "It's not. Sometimes you teach things you never meant to." There was a pause, a delicate one, where something unspoken lingered between us. The world outside the room carried on, but inside, time felt suspended. As we packed up later, she thanked me for helping, her tone light again. But I caught the brief flicker in her eyes, a question, maybe even worry, quickly hidden behind her usual calm. Walking home, I could still feel the ghost of her touch on my hand. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was human, the kind of closeness that starts quietly and grows without permission. It didn't take long for people to notice. They always do. A few students began to whisper when they saw me carrying stacks of papers from her office or staying behind after class. At first, I ignored it. Teenagers will always find something to talk about, but gossip, once started, has a way of spreading like smoke through a closed room. One morning, I walked into class and felt the shift immediately. The usual chatter quieted for just a second, long enough to feel the weight of a dozen eyes. Someone snickered. Another whispered, "He's her favorite." I laughed it off, but inside, my stomach tightened. She must have heard the same things. That afternoon, she seemed distant. Her movements were sharper, her voice more formal. When the bell rang, she didn't look at me. I almost left, but something in me refused to. I couldn't stand the idea of her facing that quiet cruelty alone. When the last student left, I lingered by the doorway. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She didn't turn around right away. "Of course," she said, too quickly. Papers rustled as she gathered them, hands trembling slightly. "People talk. That's what they do when they don't understand." Her composure was practiced, the kind that comes from years of being strong for everyone else. But when she finally looked at me, I saw it, the tiredness in her eyes, the faint shadow of hurt behind the calm. I stepped forward, unsure if I was overstepping, but unable to stop myself. "They don't know you," I said quietly. "Not the way I do." For a moment, silence filled the space between us. Then, she exhaled, slow and heavy, and sat down at her desk. "You're kind," she said, her voice softer now. "You shouldn't have to be." I wanted to tell her it wasn't kindness. It was something deeper, something I didn't have the courage to name. Instead, I just picked up the papers she dropped and began helping her organize them. She didn't stop me this time. As we worked, her hand brushed mine once, brief, unintentional, but it stilled me completely. She didn't pull away. The silence was full again, not heavy, just real. Two people holding a moment together because neither wanted to let it go. When she finally said, "Thank you," her voice cracked ever so slightly. That night, I couldn't stop replaying that sound, not the words, but the quiet ache behind them. It was a Thursday afternoon, quiet, unusually so. The kind of day where the air feels heavier than it should, as if it already knows something is about to change. The library was nearly empty, just the faint sound of pages turning and the soft hum of the ceiling fan echoing through the stillness. That's where I found her, sitting by the window, reading alone. She looked peaceful, framed by the light pouring through the glass. It softened everything, her eyes, her posture, even the fine strands of hair that slipped loose and brushed against her cheek. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching her, realizing how deeply she had settled into my thoughts without even trying. When she noticed me, she smiled, polite, cautious. "You're supposed to be in class," she teased gently. "I finished early," I replied, though the truth was, I just needed to see her. I sat across from her, pretending to look at the book she had been reading, but my heart was loud in my chest. The silence stretched between us, warm but unsteady. I didn't plan to speak, I never do, but the words rose up anyway, quiet and certain. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I said. She blinked, confused at first. "What happened?" I took a slow breath. "You became someone I can't stop thinking about." The sentence hung in the air, fragile and heavy all at once. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she closed the book slowly, her fingers trembling just enough for me to notice. When she finally met my eyes, there was no anger there, only a softness edged with sorrow. "You shouldn't say that," she whispered. Her voice was gentle, but her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You'll make things harder for both of us." "I know," I said. "But it's already hard not to say it." For a moment, she looked down, the corners of her mouth curving into something between a smile and a sigh. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I should tell you this lesson ends here," she murmured. "But part of me doesn't want it to." The honesty in her voice broke something open in me, a quiet flood of relief and ache all at once. We sat there, the world outside fading to gold, neither of us moving. In that stillness, nothing happened, no words, no touch, yet everything changed. The days after that afternoon in the library felt different, slower, heavier. She didn't look at me the same way anymore. Or maybe she was trying not to. In class, her tone was measured, her gaze careful, her presence suddenly distant. Every word she spoke to me sounded like it had been weighed 100 times before leaving her lips. I told myself it was fine, that I had crossed a line, that she was only doing what she had to. But I couldn't ignore the quiet ache in the spaces where her warmth used to be. The after-school talk stopped. No more shared laughter, no soft glances across the desk. Just polite nods, professional smiles, and silence where meaning used to live. One afternoon, I walked into the classroom after everyone had left. The sunlight was fading, spilling through the windows in long, soft streaks. Her desk was empty, except for a folded note resting on top of one of my old essays. My name was written in her handwriting, small and steady. I opened it carefully. Just a few words, "Some lessons take time to understand." That was all. No signature. No explanation. I stared at it for a long time, trying to decipher what she meant. Was it goodbye? Was it regret? Or maybe it was her way of telling me that what we shared wasn't wrong, just not meant for now. I found her outside later, near the old courtyard behind the school. The air was still, full of that golden quiet that comes before evening. She turned when she saw me, and for the first time in days, she smiled, not her polite teacher's smile, but the real one. The one I'd missed. "I got your note," I said softly. She nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. "I meant it," she replied. "You'll understand one day." There was a pause. Then, she stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're learning how to feel deeply, and that's rare. Don't lose that. Even if it hurts." Her hand came up, light, trembling slightly, and rested against my cheek. The touch was fleeting, like sunlight brushing skin before it disappears. "Goodbye," she said gently. And then she walked away. I didn't call after her. I just stood there, feeling the warmth of her hand fading slowly, until it was replaced by the cool breath of evening. Years passed, enough for the seasons to blur into one another, enough for the ache to soften into memory. Life had taken me far from that old classroom, but some days, I still found myself thinking about her. About the way she spoke with calm certainty, about how she made the simplest moments feel like something worth holding on to. I had grown older, steadier. The wide-eyed student in me had become a man, one who now understood what she meant by "some lessons take time to understand." But even so, there was a small part of me that still wondered if she ever thought of me too. When I returned to the school one autumn afternoon, it was almost by accident. The gates creaked the same way they used to, and the air carried that familiar mix of chalk, paper, and rain-soaked leaves. Everything looked smaller, quieter, except for the feeling in my chest. And then I saw her. She was walking along the garden path, papers in hand, her steps unhurried. Her hair had more silver now, her expression gentler, wiser. But when she looked up and saw me, that same spark, the one that had once made the world stand still, returned to her eyes. "I wondered when you'd visit," she said with a smile that carried both surprise and fondness. We walked together through the garden where the roses were just starting to bloom again. The silence between us was easy this time, not heavy or uncertain. Years had washed away the confusion, leaving only warmth, the kind that lingers when two people once shared something real. "Did you ever finish that essay?" she asked suddenly, her tone playful. I laughed softly. "Not yet. It's about lessons that never really end." She nodded, looking out toward the horizon. "The best ones don't. They just change form." The sunlight fell across her face, catching the small lines near her eyes, lines carved not by age, but by years of caring too deeply. I realized then that I didn't feel that restless longing anymore. What I felt was gratitude, for her guidance, for her kindness, for teaching me not just how to write or think, but how to feel. Before leaving, I said quietly, "You were right. Some lessons stay with you forever." She smiled. Then I did my job. As I walked away, the autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying her voice like a soft echo. Some lessons aren't written in any book. They live in the heart, growing quietly, endlessly, like the memory of someone who once taught you how to see the world a little more gently. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who once taught you more than words ever could, don't forget to give this video a like. Subscribe for more slow burn age gap love stories that unfold one heartbeat at a time. And tell me in the comments. Have you ever met someone who became a lesson you'll never forget?